The elk moved through the pre-dawn mist like a ghost made flesh, but Marcus Kane's wolf saw it as prey. Not the human part of him that calculated wind speed and bullet drop. The wolf, the predator that lived beneath his skin and had been caged for too long in this mountain exile. He lay prone on the ridge, the Winchester Model 70 resting against his shoulder with the familiar weight of an old friend. Through the Leopold scope, he could see the steam rising from the bull's nostrils, could count the points on the rack. 12, maybe 13, a trophy animal by any standard. His wolf stirred, wanting the hunt to be real, wanting to shift, to run, to feel the kill between his jaws instead of delivering it from 300 yards through precision engineering. Marcus pushed the instinct down. He'd learned to cage his wolf the same way he'd learned to cage everything else after the exile. After Natalie died, 1,095 days since his mate's death. His true mate, not the political pairing his father had arranged before Marcus understood what real mate bonds felt like. Natalie had been Omega, yes, but she'd been his in ways that transcended designation. Her loss had nearly killed his wolf. Some days Marcus thought it would have been kinder if it had. The elk raised its head, testing the air. Marcus's alpha instincts read the animal's body language, predicted its next 3 moves before it made them. That's what 8 generations of Alpha Kings bred for. The ability to read prey, predict patterns, dominate through understanding rather than just strength. His father would have been disappointed to see those instincts used on elk instead of political enemies. Marcus exhaled slowly, finger moving from guard to trigger. The crosshairs settled just behind the elk's shoulder, heart and lungs. Instant. The humane kill his father had taught him before teaching him how to kill men. The rifle's crack split the morning wide open. The elk stumbled, took 3 staggering steps, and collapsed. The echo rolled across the valley like thunder, and for just a moment, Marcus felt his wolf surge, felt the satisfaction of the hunt, the rightness of it. Then the moment passed, and he was just a man with a rifle and a freezer to fill. He worked the bolt, ejecting the spent casing. It tumbled through the air, brass catching sunlight, landing in the dirt beside him with a sound like a period at the end of a sentence. Through the scope he watched for movement, old habits from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from a dozen other places where confirming the kill meant staying alive. The elk didn't move. Marcus rose, his 6'3" frame unfolding with the careful precision of someone whose joints protested the cold. 39 years old, and some mornings he felt ancient. The wolf inside him disagreed. Wolves didn't age the same way humans did. The beast was still young, still strong, still trapped inside a man who'd lost the right to let it run free. He safed the rifle, slung it across his back, and started down the slope toward his kill. The walk gave him too much time to think. That was the problem with hunting alone. Too much silence to fill with memories that should have stayed buried. He thought about the last time he'd worn the crown, standing in the council chamber of the Northern Territories, while 12 pairs of eyes judged him and found him wanting. Alpha King Marcus Kane, stripped of his throne for refusing to follow orders, for choosing conscience over command, for letting 47 civilians die because he wouldn't authorize their execution. Except he hadn't let them die. Someone else had killed them. Someone else had pulled those triggers. But Marcus had been in command, and in the pack hierarchy, the Alpha always bore responsibility for his wolves' actions. Even when those wolves were following different orders from a different Alpha. By the time he reached the elk, the sun had crested the eastern peaks. He knelt beside the animal, placed one hand on its still warm flank. This was ritual, taught by his father when Marcus was 8 and killed his first deer. Respect for the hunt, gratitude for the meat, acknowledgement that something had died so something else could live. He whispered the old words in the language his pack had spoken for 8 generations. Then he pulled the hunting knife from his belt and began the work of field dressing. An hour later, he had the heart, liver, and backstraps wrapped in game bags, the hide rolled and tied, the rest cached for later retrieval. He shouldered what he could carry and started the long walk back toward the only civilization he could tolerate anymore. Black Pine Ridge appeared through the trees like a memory made solid. 200 souls, half of them wolves, the other half humans who'd learned to coexist with shifters back when the territorial treaties were signed. A good town. Quiet. The kind of place where a disgraced Alpha King could pretend to be just another veteran trying to forget what war had taught him. Marcus bypassed Main Street, taking the service road behind the buildings. No need to advertise the kill, even though everyone would know by lunchtime anyway. In a town where half the population could scent blood from a mile away, secrets didn't last long. He made his way to Grizzly's gun and tackle, shouldering through the steel door into the shop's processing room. Roy Martinez looked up from the rifle he was cleaning. Grizzly. The nickname had stuck since their Army Ranger days, back when Roy could bench press 300 pounds, and Marcus was still a captain who believed the system worked. Both of them had been younger then, stupider maybe. Marcus dumped the game bags on the stainless steel table. Grizzly's wolf stirred, scenting the fresh kill, but the older beta had better control than most. He just nodded approval, wiping his hands on a rag that might have been white once. Good size bull. Marcus began field stripping his rifle with the muscle memory of 15,000 repetitions. They worked in comfortable silence, two wolves who'd run together long enough to not need words. The only sounds were the soft clicks of disassembly, the whisper of cleaning patches through barrels, the distant hum of the refrigeration unit. Finally, Grizzly spoke, his voice carrying that particular tone that meant he had news Marcus wouldn't like. Got a tourist coming tomorrow. Photographer. Says she wants to shoot the wolf pack up on Granite Ridge. Marcus paused mid-stroke through the barrel, his alpha instincts immediately suspicious. Photographing wolf packs wasn't inherently dangerous, but it required getting close to territorial predators who didn't always distinguish between camera lenses and rifle scopes. With a camera, I hope. Yeah. Grizzly's tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Some Omega girl from Seattle. Says she's doing a conservation story. Paid up front, asked for the best guide in 3 counties. And you gave her my name. You're the only one who knows those wolves well enough to keep a civilian alive around them. Marcus resumed cleaning, forcing his movements to stay steady. He didn't guide much anymore, didn't like the questions tourists asked when they figured out who he used to be. But money was necessary, and there were worse ways to spend a day than walking the high country with someone who wouldn't know a war criminal from a wilderness guide. When? Day after tomorrow. Dawn start. She's staying at the Pine Lodge if you want to scout her first. Marcus considered it. His wolf wanted to investigate, to assess this stranger who'd be in his territory. The human part of him just wanted to get through one more day without complications. I'll manage. Grizzly handed him a slip of paper with a name written in careful block letters. Lily Morgan. That's her cover name anyway. Marcus's eyes snapped up. Cover name? Grizzly's expression was carefully neutral. Been doing this 30 years. I know when someone's scent doesn't match their story. She smells like Omega, yeah. But underneath the suppressants? Beta. Maybe stronger. And she moves like someone who's had tactical training. Military? Or intelligence? Hard to say. But she's not just a photographer, Marcus. You should know that going in. Marcus studied the name. Lily Morgan. The kind of generic alias someone would choose if they wanted to blend in. His wolf growled low in his chest, territorial instincts flaring at the thought of an unknown operative in his sanctuary. Why tell me this and not turn her away? Because, Grizzly said quietly, she asked specifically for you. Not the best guide, not the most experienced. You. By name. And that means whatever she's really here for, you're already involved. Marcus felt the familiar weight settling over him. The weight that came from understanding that peace was temporary and war always found you eventually. Thanks for the warning. He finished with the rifle, parceled out half the elk meat to Grizzly as payment for the space and the intel, then headed back to his truck with the rest. The drive to his cabin took 40 minutes on dirt roads that discouraged casual traffic. Good. He'd chosen this place specifically for its isolation. The cabin sat in a clearing 2 miles from town, close enough for convenience, far enough for solitude. Simple structure. One room that served as kitchen, living area, and bedroom. A bathroom added on the back with a propane water heater that worked when it felt like it. Solar panels on the roof, a wood stove for heat. Everything a man needed, nothing he didn't. Marcus stored the meat in the chest freezer on the porch, then stood in the doorway looking at the space that passed for home. His gaze caught on the photo sitting on the rough-hewn mantel above the stove. Natalie. 32 years old in that picture, laughing at something he'd said, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes bright with the kind of joy that came from loving someone who loved you back. 3 years since that photo. 3 years since Operation Crimson Dawn. 3 years since his mate died bleeding out in the sand while he tried to hold her together with pressure and prayer and promises he couldn't keep. His wolf howled silently inside his chest, the sound of a creature that had lost its other half and knew it would never be whole again. Marcus crossed to the mantel, picked up the photo with hands that still smelled like elk blood and gun oil. "Promise me you'll find peace." Her last words, whispered between breaths that came too far apart. He'd promised because what else could he do? You didn't deny a dying mate's final request. But peace was something Marcus had never been good at finding. His phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. "Mr. Kane, this is Lily Morgan. Mr. Martinez gave me your number. I understand you're guiding me day after tomorrow. I wanted to confirm timing and discuss what I should bring. Looking forward to working with you." Professional, courteous, the kind of message designed to put him at ease while revealing nothing about the sender's real intentions. Marcus's wolf circled warily inside his chest, every instinct screaming that this woman was either threat or opportunity, and he couldn't afford to misidentify which. He typed a response. "Dawn, 0500 at the trailhead parking lot. Bring layers, good boots, water for 8 hours. I'll handle the rest." 3 dots appeared immediately. She was waiting for his response. "Thank you. See you then." Marcus set the phone aside and stared at Natalie's photo for a long moment. Then he carefully placed it back on the mantel, turned away, and busied himself with evening routines. Stoke the fire, heat water for instant coffee, sit at the table and stare at the wall until darkness fell and sleep became possible. That night the dreams came like they always did. Sand and screams and the wet sound of bullets hitting flesh. Natalie's voice calling his name. Stone's voice over the radio. "Light them up, Captain. That's an order." And underneath it all, his wolf howling in rage and grief and the terrible understanding that pack bonds could be broken by betrayal just as surely as death. He woke at 0400, reaching for a sidearm that wasn't there. 3 breaths to remember where he was. Montana, cabin, exile, safe. The word felt like a lie. By 0445 on the appointed morning, Marcus sat in his truck at the trailhead parking lot, watching the access road through the rearview mirror. His wolf was restless, pacing inside his skin, demanding to shift and scout the perimeter. Marcus kept it caged through sheer willpower. Headlights appeared at 0455, a Jeep, older model, Washington plates. It pulled into the space beside his truck with careful precision. The engine cut. The door opened. And Marcus's wolf slammed against his control so hard he nearly shifted right there. She stepped out and everything changed. Lily Morgan was small, maybe 5'7", athletic build, hidden under layers of technical fabric and a photographer's vest. Brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Face bare of makeup, all sharp cheekbones and serious hazel eyes that swept the parking lot with tactical awareness. But it was her scent that destroyed Marcus's composure. Omega, yes. The suppressants were there, chemical and deliberate, designed to mask natural pheromones. But underneath them, something that made his wolf surge to the surface with recognition that transcended logic. Mate. Not possible. He'd already had a mate. True bonds didn't happen twice. The moon didn't grant that kind of mercy to wolves who'd already lost everything. But his wolf didn't care about possibility. It only knew what it knew. This woman, this stranger with the fake name and the hidden designation, carried something his wolf recognized on a level deeper than conscious thought. Potential. She approached his truck, camera bag slung across her body, and stopped 3 feet from his door. Far enough to be respectful, close enough to be heard. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of voice that knew how to avoid drawing attention. "Mr. Kane?" Marcus climbed out, towering over her by 8 inches, watching her eyes track upward. She assessed his height, his build, the scars visible on his hands and neck. Professional evaluation. Not fear, not submission. Just data collection. His wolf approved. "Call me Marcus. You're Lily?" She nodded, extended a hand. Her grip was firm, brief, but in that moment of skin contact, Marcus felt his wolf surge again, felt the pull, the recognition, the absolute certainty that this woman was more than she appeared. He released her hand quickly, stepped back before his wolf could do something stupid like scent marking or partial shifting. She didn't seem to notice his reaction, but Marcus suspected she noticed everything. "You ready for a long day?" "I am." She gestured to her boots, top-of-the-line Salomons that looked broken in. "I brought what you suggested. Water, layers, emergency beacon." Anything else I need to know? Marcus studied her, reading micro-expressions the way alphas learn to read their pack. She was nervous, but controlled, focused, but with an undercurrent of something else. Purpose, maybe, or mission. Grizzly was right. She wasn't just a photographer. Wolves are unpredictable, he said, testing her reaction. We might not see them at all. If we do, we stay downwind and keep distance. No sudden movements, no loud noises. They tolerate observation, but not interference. Her eyes sharpened slightly at his word choice. Wolves, not the wolf pack, like she'd caught the implication that he was including himself in that category. Understood. Granite Ridge is an 8-mile hike. Elevation gain of 2,200 feet. Above tree line most of the way. Weather changes fast up there. If I say we turn back, we turn back. No argument. I follow your lead. The way she said it made Marcus's alpha instincts flare. Not submission, acknowledgement of expertise, the way a good soldier respected a good sergeant's call. His wolf circled, intrigued despite his human brain's warnings. He grabbed his pack from the truck bed, locked up, gestured toward the trail. Let's move. They walked in silence for the first mile, following a well-maintained path through lodgepole pine and Douglas fir. Marcus set a steady pace, letting her find her rhythm. She kept up easily, her breathing controlled, her footfalls quiet. Too quiet for a city girl who claimed limited outdoor experience. His wolf tracked her through scent and sound, hyper-aware of her presence in ways that had nothing to do with professional guiding and everything to do with the mate bond trying to assert itself. Marcus fought it down. He'd buried one mate. He wasn't setting himself up for that kind of loss again. At the 2-mile mark, the trail steepened. Marcus paused at a rest point, offering his water bottle. She produced her own instead, took small, measured sips, studied the terrain ahead with eyes that assessed angles and approaches. Definitely tactical training. How long have you been guiding? 1.5 years. What did you do before? The question every tourist asked eventually. Marcus had his answer rehearsed. Military, leadership roles mostly. It wasn't entirely a lie. Alpha Kings led their territories the same way generals led armies. Moving people and resources from point A to point B without getting them killed. He'd been good at it once. She nodded, asked nothing more. Either she accepted the vague answer, or she already knew his real history. Marcus suspected the latter. They resumed climbing. The trees thinned as they gained elevation, giving way to scrub brush and exposed rock. Wind picked up, carrying the scent of snow from higher peaks. Marcus scanned the ridgeline automatically, old training asserting itself. High ground, cover, sight lines, exit routes. Everything was a potential battlefield when you'd spent enough time on actual battlefields. At the 4-mile mark, they crested the ridge. The view opened up like a promise the world was trying to keep. Valleys stretching in every direction, thick with forests that hadn't been logged in generations. Peaks rising like teeth against impossible blue sky. And in the distance, barely visible, dark shapes moving across a meadow. The pack! Marcus's wolf surged, wanting to shift, to run, to join them. He caged it ruthlessly. That pack wasn't his anymore. He'd given up the right to run with wolves when he gave up his crown. Lily's breath caught. Not a gasp, just a small sound of genuine wonder. There, she whispered. Marcus followed her gaze, counting. 7 wolves, the alpha pair in the lead, 3 juveniles from last year's litter, 2 older wolves flanking. His pack senses read their dynamics automatically. Strong alpha, stable hierarchy, healthy bloodlines. Everything his own pack should have been if he hadn't failed them. She already had her camera up, adjusting settings with practiced efficiency that spoke of real skill, not just hobbyist interest. The shutter clicked, rapid fire, capturing movement and light. She worked in focused silence, shifting positions to get different angles, patient when the wolves moved behind cover. Marcus watched her instead of the pack. Watched the way she moved, economical and purposeful. Watched the way her eyes tracked the wolves, predicting their patterns. Watched the small smile that touched her lips when she got a shot she liked. That smile did something dangerous to his wolf's control. The wolves disappeared into the tree line after 20 minutes. She lowered her camera, checked the display screen, nodded to herself with professional satisfaction. Thank you, that was perfect. We've got time if you want to wait. They might come back. I'd like that. They settled onto sun-warmed rocks, backs against a boulder. She kept her camera ready but didn't obsess over it. Instead, she pulled an energy bar from her vest, offered half. Marcus accepted, surprised by the gesture. They ate in companionable silence, watching the meadow where the wolves had been. After a while, she spoke. "Do you miss it, the military?" Marcus considered lying, considered deflecting, decided on something closer to truth. "I miss the brotherhood, the men. Knowing your life was in someone else's hands and theirs was in yours. The bond that comes from trusting people with everything." His wolf stirred of the word bond, reminded of connections that had been broken. "What don't you miss?" Having to choose between orders and conscience, the words came out before he could stop them. Honest, raw, immediate. He waited for her reaction. Pity or judgment or worse, fake understanding. She just nodded slowly, like she'd heard that particular struggle before. "My fiancé was military, Army medic. He said similar things. Loved his brothers. Hated that sometimes the mission required sacrificing what felt right for what was ordered." Past tense, was. Marcus heard the grief in it, recognized the shape of loss. "I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you." She took a breath, steadying herself. "It's been 2 years. Everyone says it gets easier, but I'm not sure that's true. I think you just get better at carrying the weight." Marcus knew exactly what she meant, knew it in his bones, in the part of his wolf that still howled for Natalie in his sleep. "What was his name?" "David." She smiled, small and sad and genuine. "David Morgan. He loved the mountains, loved helping people, died doing both." She didn't elaborate. Marcus didn't push. They sat with their separate griefs, two strangers who'd found unexpected common ground in loss. Then she added quieter. "He had a younger brother, James, also military, intelligence officer. They were close. After David died, James made it his mission to find out what really happened on the operation that killed him." Marcus's wolf went very still. Intelligence officer, mission to investigate an operation. The pieces clicked together with uncomfortable precision. "Did he find answers?" She met his eyes, and for the first time since meeting her, Marcus saw past the careful control to something raw underneath. He found questions that people didn't want asked, and then he disappeared 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. Right around the time Grizzly said this photographer appeared in town asking specifically for Marcus Kane. "I'm sorry," he said, meaning it. She looked away toward the meadow. "I came here looking for peace, trying to understand what David loved about these mountains, trying to feel close to my brothers again." Brothers, plural. Present tense for James, past for David. She was looking for her missing brother, and somehow Marcus was connected to that search. His wolf wanted to help her, wanted to protect her, wanted to claim her as mate and defend her against whatever threat had taken her brother. His human brain knew better than to trust instincts that had already gotten one mate killed. The wolves returned an hour later, moving through the meadow with the casual confidence of apex predators in their own territory. She photographed them until the light started to fade, then packed her camera with the care of someone handling something precious. The hike down took less time than the climb up. They moved through gathering dusk, Marcus leading with the sure-footedness of someone who could walk these trails blind. She followed, quiet and capable, asking no help even when the trail got tricky. At the parking lot, she turned to face him. "What do I owe you?" Marcus named his standard rate. She pulled cash from her wallet, added an extra 100, "For your time and your patience, and for not asking questions you knew I wouldn't answer." "You don't need to." "I want to." Something in her voice made it impossible to argue. Marcus pocketed the money. "There's a diner in town, the Trailhead Cafe, best coffee in 3 counties, if you're hungry." The invitation surprised him as much as it seemed to surprise her. They stood in the parking lot, two people who'd spent a day together in the wilderness and somehow weren't quite ready to say goodbye. "I'd like that." They drove separately into town, parked side by side at the diner. Inside, the place was nearly empty, too late for dinner crowd, too early for the bar rush. They took a booth by the window, ordered coffee and pie from a waitress who gave Marcus a knowing look that he ignored. She wrapped her hands around her mug, breathed in the steam. "I appreciate today. It's been a while since I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be." Marcus understood that too. The feeling of rightness that came from being in wild places with the wind in your face and the ground solid under your feet. "You're welcome back any time. The wolves will be there." She studied him over the rim of her mug, and Marcus felt his wolf stir under the weight of her attention. "Can I ask you something?" He braced himself. "When you said you had to choose between orders and conscience, did something happen that made you leave?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "I was given orders I couldn't follow, did what I thought was right instead. Turns out right and legal aren't always the same thing. People died anyway. Good people. and I live with knowing I failed them." Her hand moved across the table, stopped just short of touching his. "You blame yourself for following your conscience? I blame myself for not being strong enough to save everyone." Her expression shifted, not pity, something deeper, recognition. David was like that. Carried every death like personal failure, even when there was nothing more he could have done, even when following orders would have meant doing something unforgivable. Marcus looked at her hand, hovering between them. Small, capable, offering comfort he didn't deserve. "Your brother James, the one who disappeared, was he investigating the same operation that killed David?" She pulled her hand back slowly. "I think so. He sent me encrypted files 3 weeks ago. Said he had proof of what really happened. Said it went higher than anyone suspected. Then he went dark. And you came here looking for him." "I came here looking for the truth." She met his eyes. "And I think you're connected to it somehow." Marcus should have asked how, should have demanded details, should have ended this conversation before it led somewhere dangerous. Instead he said, "I'll help however I can." They sat in the diner while the coffee went cold, and the waitress refilled their cups twice, and the sky outside turned from blue to black, talking about mountains and loss, and the way grief changed you into someone you didn't quite recognize anymore. Finally she spoke. "I'm staying in town for a few days, editing photos, exploring. If you need company for morning coffee, I'll be around." Marcus should have said no, should have maintained the distance he'd worked so hard to build, should have remembered that people who got close to him had a habit of ending up dead. Instead he said, "I'm usually here by 6. She smiled, small, real. "I'll see you then." They parted in the parking lot with a handshake that lasted a moment too long. Marcus watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the night, and felt something he hadn't felt in 18 months. Hope. He killed the feeling on the drive home, reminded himself that hope was dangerous, that attachment was weakness, that Lily Morgan was here for reasons that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with her missing brother. But that night, for the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus slept without nightmares. The morning coffee became routine. Day 2, Day 3, Day 4. They sat in the same booth, drank the same coffee, talked about things that didn't matter and things that did. She told him about Seattle, about growing up Omega in a city where Omegas were either coddled or dismissed. Marcus told her about Montana, about the quiet satisfaction of living alone and the way the mountains made everything else seem small. They didn't talk about David. They didn't talk about James. They didn't talk about the reasons 2 broken people kept showing up to share coffee they didn't need. But the pull was there, undeniable, growing stronger each morning. On the 5th day, she asked him to teach her to hunt. Not for photographs, for real. "I want to understand what you see when you look at the forest. Want to track something. Want to learn." Marcus should have said no, should have recognized this for what it was, a line about to be crossed, a boundary about to be breached. But his wolf wanted her close, wanted to teach her, protect her, run with her, wanted things that terrified the human part of him that knew better. He heard himself say yes. 2 days later, they left before dawn. Marcus in the lead, Lily following, both of them moving through darkness with only headlamps to guide the way. The trail took them deep into national forest, following game paths that didn't appear on any map. At the 3-hour mark, Marcus stopped, pointed to tracks in the mud. "Elk bull, big one, 4, maybe 5 hours ahead." "How can you tell?" The depth of the print, the spacing, the way he's moving, confident, no fear. Only mature bulls move like that. She knelt, studied the track. Her fingers traced the outline without touching, and Marcus's wolf rumbled approval at her natural respect for the hunt. What else? He crouched beside her, close enough to feel her warmth. He's favoring his right front leg. See how the left print is deeper? Old injury, maybe? He won't move as fast as a healthy bull, so we can catch him. We can try. They spent the next 4 hours following that bull. Marcus taught her to read sign, to move without sound, to think like both prey and predator. She absorbed everything with focused intensity that spoke of someone used to learning quickly under pressure. Too much like tactical training for a photographer. But Marcus didn't question it, didn't want to break whatever spell had settled over them, moving through the forest like they'd been hunting together for years instead of hours. They found the bull in a clearing, bedded down in tall grass. Marcus gestured for her to stay low. They bellied forward until they had clear sight. 12-point rack, massive body, the kind of animal that would feed a family for months. Marcus pulled his rifle, offered it to her. Her eyes went wide. "I can't." "Why not?" "I've never shot anything before." "There's always a first time." She hesitated, then took the rifle. Marcus positioned himself behind her, adjusting her grip, her stance, her breathing, talking her through it like he'd done for 100 raw recruits who'd never held a weapon. His wolf was too close to the surface, hyper-aware of her scent, her warmth, the way she fit against him like she belonged there. He forced his focus to the teaching. Breathe in, hold, find your target, squeeze, don't pull. Her finger settled on the trigger. The elk rose, presenting perfect broadside. She didn't shoot. Marcus felt her breathing change, felt her body tense in a way that had nothing to do with taking the shot. Something's wrong. His hand went to her shoulder. What? Movement. 3 o'clock, not the elk. Marcus shifted his focus, saw what she was seeing. 3 shapes moving through the trees. Not wildlife. Wrong cadence. Wrong purpose. Men. Shifters. Moving in tactical formation. Hunting. His wolf snarled, recognizing threat. These weren't rangers or game wardens. These were operators with hostile intent. Get down, now! They dropped into the grass. The elk bolted, crashing through brush. The 3 shifters' heads snapped toward the sound, then toward Marcus's position. A bullet cracked past, close enough to hear. Another impacted the tree beside them, spraying bark. Marcus grabbed her arm. Run! They ran. Behind them, the forest erupted with gunfire and shouted commands, and the sound of professional killers doing what they did best. Marcus had been hunted before, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in a dozen other places where the mission required becoming prey to draw out predators. But this was different. This was home. This was supposed to be safe. He pulled her through the trees, using terrain he knew better than the attackers. Down the ridge, through the creek, across the rockfall that would slow anyone not familiar with the route. The shifters followed, disciplined, coordinated, using communication discipline that spoke of military training. At the creek, Marcus stopped long enough to listen, caught a glimpse through the trees, tactical vest, heard radio chatter. Stone sends his regards. The words hit like a physical blow. Garrett Stone, his former commanding officer, the man who'd testified against him, the man who'd sent him into exile, the man who apparently wasn't content with destroying Marcus's life and now wanted to end it. Lily grabbed his arm. Who's Stone? Later. Move. They pushed through freezing water, climbed the far bank, kept running. Marcus's mind raced, calculating. 3 men minimum, probably more. Professional shooters, thermal optics likely, radio coordination certain, against 2 unarmed people in the middle of nowhere. The odds were not good. His truck was 5 miles away, his cabin farther. Town beyond that, all of it too far to reach before the shooters closed the distance. They needed shelter, defense, weapons. Marcus changed direction, angling toward the old logging road he'd scouted months ago. There was a ranger station there, abandoned but solid. Walls, doors that locked, a radio that might still work. Maybe. They covered another mile before she stumbled. Marcus caught her, pulled her upright. Her face was pale, breath coming hard. I'm sorry, I'm not used to this. You're doing fine, keep moving. She nodded, pushed forward. But Marcus could see her flagging. City Wolf, even a modified beta, couldn't maintain this pace indefinitely in mountain terrain. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew closer. The ranger station appeared through the trees like salvation made of rotting wood. Marcus hauled her up the steps, kicked the door open, pulled her inside, slammed it shut, threw the bolt. The interior was exactly as he remembered. Single room, empty shelves, broken furniture, and on the wall, a radio unit that looked like it hadn't worked since the Clinton administration. He moved to the windows, checking sightlines. 3 approaches. Trees providing cover to within 50 yards. No good defensive position. They were trapped. Lily leaned against the wall, catching her breath. Her eyes found his, and Marcus saw understanding there. Not fear, not confusion. Acceptance. She'd known this was coming. Maybe not the specific attack, but the inevitability of violence finding them. Marcus, she said quietly, who are these people? He should lie, should protect her from the truth, should send her out the back while he stayed to face whatever came through that door. But something in her expression stopped him, something that suggested she already knew more than she should. Someone sent them, someone who wants me dead and doesn't care about collateral damage. Before he could say more, his phone rang. Marcus stared at it. Unknown number. But he knew with the certainty of someone who'd lived this moment before in different countries with different enemies who all wanted the same thing. He answered. The voice on the other end was familiar as childhood and cold as January. Captain Kane, this is General Garrett Stone. I'm sorry it's come to this. Marcus kept his voice level. Are you? I gave you exile, gave you mercy. You should have stayed disappeared. What do you want, Stone? Your cooperation. And the cooperation of Major Sara Morgan, who I believe is standing right beside you. Marcus's eyes snapped to Lily, Sara, her real name, Major, military rank. She met his gaze without flinching, and he saw the truth there. Everything clicked into place. The tactical movement, the professional assessment, the questions about his military service. She wasn't a photographer, she was an investigator. And she'd been lying to him from the start. Stone's voice continued. Tell Major Morgan her brother is with me. If she wants Lieutenant James Morgan alive, she'll bring you to the coordinates I'm sending. Alone, 48 hours. After that, James dies, and so do both of you, one way or another. The line went dead. Marcus stared at the phone, at Sara, at the woman who'd spent 5 days earning his trust while lying about everything. His wolf snarled, betrayed and furious. His human heart felt something sharper, like hope dying all over again. Sara pushed away from the wall, straightened. When she spoke, her voice had changed. Stronger, more certain. The voice of someone who'd stopped pretending. My real name is Sara Morgan. I'm military intelligence. I was sent here to investigate you for war crimes at Operation Crimson Dawn. And I think I just realized I've been investigating the wrong man. Outside, the sound of footsteps on the porch. Inside, 2 people staring at each other across a gulf of lies and truth, and something that might have been real if they'd met in a different life. The door exploded inward. Marcus grabbed Sara, pulled her down as bullets chewed through the walls above them. This was it. The moment where everything ended or everything changed. Marcus had lived through 40 moments just like it. This time he wasn't sure which way it would go. But as he covered Sara's body with his own, as his wolf surged to the surface, ready to shift and fight and protect this woman who'd lied to him but somehow still felt like mate, Marcus Kane made a decision. If he was going to die, he was taking Stone's men with him. And if he survived, he was getting answers. His wolf erupted through his skin in a rush of power that shook the building. Bones restructured, muscle reformed, fur sprouted across flesh that became something between man and beast. The attackers had expected an exiled king playing wilderness guide. They got an alpha wolf who'd forgotten what it meant to hold back. Marcus's roar shook the rafters as he launched toward the shattered door, all fangs and fury and 3 years of caged violence finally finding release. Behind him, Sara stared in shock. In front of him, Stone's men realized they'd made a fatal miscalculation. The last thing Marcus heard before battle consumed him was Stone's voice crackling over a dropped radio. Contain him, I need them both alive. Too late. The wolf was free, and it had a pack to protect. The world tasted like blood and gunpowder and the electric scent of fear. Marcus's wolf registered all of it through senses that transcended human limitations. Heartbeats, breathing patterns, the chemical signature of adrenaline flooding 3 separate systems as Stone's operatives realized they weren't hunting a man anymore. They were being hunted by something much worse. The first operative went down under 200 pounds of alpha fury before he could process what was happening. Marcus's jaws closed around body armor, finding the gap between collar and helmet, applying just enough pressure to incapacitate without killing. The man crumpled, unconscious, and Marcus was already moving toward the second target. His wolf wanted to kill, wanted to tear and rend and eliminate the threat to his potential mate. The human part of Marcus, still present even in shifted form, maintained enough control to choose mercy over murder. Barely. The second operative managed to get his weapon up, fired 3 rounds that went wide as Marcus closed the distance with speed that made mockery of human reflexes. A swipe of claws sent the rifle spinning away. A shoulder check that would have killed a human sent the armored man crashing through the ranger station's remaining wall. The third operative ran. Smart. Marcus's wolf wanted to chase, to hunt, to finish what these attackers had started. But Sara's scent behind him, thick with shock and something that might have been awe, pulled him back from the edge. He forced the shift, bones cracking and reforming, fur receding into skin that steamed in the cold mountain air. It hurt. Every transformation hurt when you rushed it. But Marcus had learned to embrace pain as the price of control. 30 seconds and he was human again. Naked, covered in mud and blood that wasn't his. Standing over 2 unconscious operatives while Sara stared at him from the shattered doorway with eyes that had just seen every assumption about him destroyed. She started, then stopped. Tried again. You shifted. Full alpha shift. I've never seen anyone move that fast. Marcus grabbed his pack from where it had fallen during the fight, pulled out spare clothes he kept for exactly this reason. Dressed with the efficient movements of someone who'd learned to carry emergency supplies after the first time he'd shifted in public and nearly gotten arrested for indecent exposure. "How long have you been in Blackpine?" He kept his voice level despite the fury still burning through his system. His wolf was not pleased about the deception, not pleased at all. Sara's scent shifted, guilt mixing with determination. 3 weeks. I was assigned to investigate you for suspected war crimes at Operation Crimson Dawn. My cover was wildlife photographer. I was supposed to gather evidence, confirm you were guilty, and report back. And nothing I observed matches the profile of a war criminal. She stepped over debris, moved closer despite his wolf's warning growl. Everything in your file said you gave the order to execute civilians. But the tactical analysis doesn't support it. Wrong positioning, wrong timing, wrong everything. So you stayed, kept investigating. I stayed because my brother sent me encrypted files 3 weeks before he disappeared. Files that suggested someone very powerful ordered that massacre and made you the scapegoat. I needed to know if you were the monster they said you were, or if you were just another victim of whatever conspiracy got David killed. David Morgan, your fiancé. Marcus's wolf settled slightly, processing this new information. He was in my unit. Combat medic, good man, died trying to save civilians Stone's people were executing. Sara's eyes widened. You knew him. He wrote you letters, talked about you constantly, said you were the smartest person he'd ever met, and he was going to marry you as soon as the deployment ended. Tears gathered in Sara's eyes but didn't fall. She blinked them back, professional training overriding emotion. He never got the chance. Killed 3 years ago along with your mate, along with 47 civilians, all because someone wanted to cover up an arms deal. Marcus felt his wolf surge again, not in aggression, but in shared grief. This woman had lost her mate the same day he lost Natalie. They were both survivors of the same tragedy, circling each other for weeks without realizing they were connected by blood and loss. The mate bond pulsed between them, stronger now. His wolf recognized her grief, her strength, her determination, wanted to comfort her, wanted to protect her, wanted to claim her despite the logical impossibility of a second true mate. "We need to move," he said, forcing focus back to immediate survival. "Stone's people will regroup. We've got maybe 20 minutes before reinforcements arrive." "Where?" "Blackpine. It's defendable and I have allies there." "You want to lead them to civilians?" "I want to fight on ground I choose with people who know how to shoot back." She studied him for a long moment, hazel eyes assessing Alpha Wolf instead of Broken King. Then she nodded. "Your call, Captain." The title hit him hard. No one had called him Captain in 18 months. It was always Mr. Kane or that disgraced bastard or nothing at all. Hearing it from her, spoken with respect instead of mockery, made something in his chest loosen. His wolf approved. They reached Sara's truck 20 minutes later, running through forest that Marcus knew like the scars on his hands. She drove while he kept watch, rifle across his lap, every sense extended for signs of pursuit. The silence stretched for miles before Sara spoke. "I should have told you about who I was, what I was doing here." "You were following orders." "I stopped following orders around day 3, when you talked about choosing conscience over commands. When I realized the file was wrong and I was being pointed at you to keep me away from the real investigation." "Stone." She nodded, hands tight on the wheel. "James figured it out 6 months ago, got himself assigned as Stone's aide, started gathering evidence, communications with foreign military contractors, financial records showing payments to shell companies, equipment manifests that didn't match official reports. And Stone caught him. 3 weeks ago, James sent me the encrypted files, said he had proof of everything, said it went higher than just Stone. Then he disappeared. My superiors told me he'd been reassigned to classified operations. That's when I knew something was wrong. James wouldn't go dark without telling me, not after David. So you requested assignment to my case. Told them I wanted to investigate the officer who got my fiancé killed. They approved it immediately. Too immediately. Should have realized I was being sent on a wild goose chase to keep me busy while Stone cleaned up loose ends. They reached the outskirts of Blackpine as full morning hit. The town looked peaceful, deceptive. Marcus knew better than to trust peaceful anymore. Sara pulled into the alley behind Grizzly's shop. They climbed out into air that smelled like coffee and bacon and the comfortable normalcy of a Sunday morning that was about to become anything but normal. Grizzly was already waiting by the back door, One look at Marcus's face, and the older Beta's expression shifted to combat readiness. Trouble, not a question. General Garrett Stone sent a kill team. 3 operators. They'll regroup and come back with more. Grizzly's eyes flicked to Sara, reading her scent, her stance, the way she carried herself. And she's? Major Sara Morgan. Military intelligence. Marcus's wolf rumbled possessively at her name. She was investigating me for Stone's crimes. Now she's helping me expose them. Grizzly studied her with the practiced assessment of someone who'd spent 30 years sorting allies from threats. Your brother is James Morgan, the one who went missing. Sara's surprise showed for just a moment. How did you know? Grizzly tapped his nose. You smell like him. He came through here 2 months ago. Asked questions about Marcus. About Crimson Dawn. Smart kid. Careful. I gave him what I could without compromising operational security. Did he say what he found? That Stone was running black ops outside official channels. That Crimson Dawn was cover for an arms deal. That someone very powerful wanted Marcus to take the fall because he was the only officer who refused to play ball. Before Sara could respond, another vehicle pulled into the alley. Black Chevy Silverado, Montana plates, driving with the kind of aggressive confidence that marked law enforcement or military. Marcus's wolf tensed, ready to shift again if needed. Then the door opened and a scent he'd know anywhere hit his nostrils. Pack, blood, brother. Cole Kane climbed out, younger by 7 years but carrying himself like he'd aged faster. Army combat uniform, no visible insignia. Dark hair cut high and tight. Face locked in an expression of barely controlled fury that Marcus recognized from their childhood. Cole had worn that same expression the day their father died. The day Cole learned Marcus was being exiled. The day the younger brother decided the older one was dead to him. Marcus braced himself for confrontation. Cole's eyes locked on him with the kind of hate that only family could generate. Hello, Marcus. The name came out like a curse. Sara moved to put herself between them, one hand raised in a calming gesture that Marcus's wolf appreciated, even as his alpha instincts bristled at the suggestion he needed protecting from his own brother. Lieutenant Kane, I'm Major Sara Morgan, military intelligence. We need to talk about... Cole's eyes never left Marcus, but his nostrils flared as he scented her. Beta, modified to present Omega. Military training. And underneath it all, the faint chemical signature of mate bond forming between her and Marcus. Cole's lip curled. I know who you are, Major. Sent here to investigate my brother for crimes he definitely committed and apparently decided to run away with instead. That about cover it? Sara's voice stayed calm despite the accusation. It's more complicated than that. It always is with Marcus. Cole finally looked at her, his expression softening slightly. He's good at making simple things complicated, like following orders, like not getting 47 civilians killed because he thought he knew better than his commanding officer. Marcus felt old anger rising, the same anger that had burned through him during the court-martial. His wolf wanted to shift, to challenge, to make his brother submit and acknowledge that Marcus had done the right thing even if the outcome was wrong. He kept his beast caged through sheer willpower. I didn't kill those people, Cole. Number! His brother's voice cracked, fury giving way to something raw. You just let them die. Natalie died, Marcus. Good people died. And you stood there with your principles and your honor and watched it happen. I tried to stop it. You failed. The word hung between them like a blade. Grizzly cleared his throat, interrupting before violence could erupt. Boys, we don't have time for family therapy. Either kill each other or work together, but make the choice quick because we've got about 40 hours before people start dying for real. Cole turned his attention to Grizzly, seemed to recognize another soldier despite the years. You served with him? Rangers. Back when he was captain of the best unit I ever had the privilege to run with. Grizzly's voice carried authority that made even Cole's wolf settle slightly. Before politics and lies turned him into a scapegoat. The lies came from somewhere, Cole said, but doubt was creeping into his certainty. Sara stepped forward, pulled out her phone, called up encrypted files. Lieutenant Kane, I've spent 3 weeks analyzing every piece of evidence in your brother's case. The timeline doesn't support Marcus giving the kill order. The ballistics don't match his unit's weapons. The tactical positioning puts his men 300 meters from the compound when the shooting started. She pulled up a satellite image, marked with tactical overlays. Someone else's unit killed those civilians. Someone framed your brother to protect an illegal arms deal, and that someone has my brother right now. Cole stared at the data, his wolf instincts warring with 3 years of belief that Marcus was guilty. Marcus could see the moment training began to override emotion, the moment Cole started thinking like a soldier instead of a grieving brother. This could be fabricated. It could be. But it's not. Sara's voice gentled. I know you want Marcus to be guilty. It's easier than accepting you've hated him for 18 months over a lie. But James found this same evidence. That's why Stone has him. That's why we need your help. Cole looked at Marcus, really looked at him, for the first time since arriving. Marcus held his brother's gaze, let him see the truth. Let him scent the honesty that wolves could detect better than any polygraph. Finally, Cole spoke. What's the plan? Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of it. We make Stone come to us. Force him to bring James out where we can hit him. How? Sara pulled out a small hard drive from her pocket. James sent me this before he went dark. Financial records, communications, operational files, everything we need to prove Stone ordered the Crimson Dawn massacre. How long to decrypt it? She checked her watch. 6 hours if I can access a secure system. Grizzly gestured to his back office. Got what you need in there. Military-grade encryption software from my consulting days. Not exactly legal, but it works. Sara took the drive, headed for the office. Marcus turned to Cole. You don't have to help. This isn't your fight. Cole's expression hardened again, but differently. Not hate. Determination. If Stone framed you, if he used Natalie's death to destroy you, used David Morgan's death to manipulate his sister, then yeah, it's my fight. He killed Pack. That makes it blood debt. Marcus's wolf recognized the old law. Pack protects Pack. Blood debt must be paid. I'm sorry I failed her, Cole. Failed Natalie. Failed my unit. I live with it every day. Maybe. Cole's voice was rough. Or maybe you're the only one who didn't fail. Maybe the rest of us just believed the convenient lie because it was easier than questioning a 4-star general's word. They stood in Grizzly's alley, two brothers who'd been strangers for too long, with Stone's forces potentially hours away, and a conspiracy that had cost too many lives already. Cole extended his hand. Truce until this is over. Marcus took it, felt his wolf settle for the first time in months. Pack bonds, even damaged ones, still meant something. Truce. Grizzly clapped them both on the shoulders with the kind of relief that came from watching family heal instead of fracture further. Good. Now let's figure out how to make a 4-star general regret ever hearing the name Kane. They spent the afternoon at Tom Briggs's hunting cabin, planning. The sheriff had appeared within an hour of them arriving at Grizzly's, somehow knowing Marcus would need a secure location. The cabin was exactly as advertised. Reinforced walls, good sight lines, solar power, and well water. A ham radio setup that actually worked when Cole tested it. Sara worked on decrypting James's drive in the back room, while Marcus and Cole inventoried weapons and supplies. They moved around each other with the careful precision of wolves who'd trained together once, muscle memory reasserting itself despite years of distance. Cole spoke first, breaking the silence. The rifle Dad gave you? The Winchester. You still have it? Marcus paused in loading magazines. Yeah, at my cabin. I kept mine too, the 22 he gave me when I turned 12. It was the first real conversation they'd had about their father since the funeral, the first acknowledgement that they'd both lost more than an alpha when the old man died. He'd be disappointed in both of us, Marcus said quietly. Me for getting exiled. You for believing I deserved it. Cole was quiet for a long moment then. Or he'd understand we're both trying to do what he taught us. Honor. Duty. Protecting people who can't protect themselves. Even when it costs everything? Especially then. They finished loading ammunition in silence that felt less hostile than it had that morning. Marcus's wolf settled, recognizing pack bonds reforming, brotherhood healing despite the scars. At hour 6, Sara emerged from the back room. Her face was pale, but her eyes burned with triumph. I'm in. The files James had compiled were devastating. 3 years of financial records showing payments from defense contractors to shell companies controlled by Stone. Communications with foreign military officers in countries where U.S. troops officially weren't operating. Equipment manifests showing weapons disappearing from inventory. And buried in the center, encrypted 3 levels deep, the operational files for Crimson Dawn. Marcus read the summary, his wolf snarling in his chest as everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. Stone was running an arms deal, selling U.S. military weapons to both sides of the Kharistan Civil War. The compound we raided wasn't a terrorist cell, it was the meeting point for the transaction. Sara pulled up tactical photos, her hands shaking slightly with suppressed rage. The civilians were witnesses. They saw Stone's unit delivering the weapons, so Stone ordered them eliminated and blamed your unit for the massacre. Cole stared at the screen, his own wolf rising close to the surface. Natalie and David, they saw it happen. Marcus nodded, the grief fresh despite 3 years of carrying it. They tried to stop it. David was treating wounded civilians. Natalie was helping him. Stone's men killed them both to eliminate witnesses, made it look like crossfire. "We need to get this out," Sara said, already pulling up contact lists. "Every file, every transaction, make it so public Stone can't bury it." Marcus grabbed his phone, started making calls. First to a reporter he'd known when he was still king, then to a congressional aide, then to 3 different military oversight offices. Each conversation was short and identical. "Here's what I'm sending. Verify it, act on it, ignore it, and you're complicit." Within an hour, the files were in 20 different hands. Some would ignore them. Some would try to bury them. But some would act. That's all they needed. Marcus's phone rang as the sun began to set. "Unknown number." He answered, knowing exactly who it would be. Stone's voice came through, colder than before. "You really are determined to make this difficult. You killed my mate. You killed good soldiers. You tried to kill me. Difficult seems appropriate. I gave you exile, let you live quietly. But you couldn't leave it alone. You took something that wasn't yours. I'm taking it back." Stone laughed, sharp and humorless. "What, Your Honor? Your crown? Those died at Crimson Dawn, Marcus. You're just too stubborn to accept it. I accept that you're a murderer and a traitor, and in about 6 hours so will everyone else." Silence, then Stone's voice harder. "You leaked the files. Doesn't matter. I have friends in every agency you contacted. They'll be buried by morning. Maybe. Or maybe you're not as untouchable as you think." More silence, then. "Last chance. You and Major Morgan turn yourselves in. I'll let her brother live. You'll get a trial. More mercy than you deserve. We both know there won't be a trial. Just an accident during transport. Then James Morgan dies screaming, and you'll hear every second of it." The line went dead. Sara's face had gone white. "He's going to kill James. Not if we get there first." Cole spread a tactical map on the table. "We can't assault Stone's facility. Not with 3 people against whatever force he's positioned there. Then we don't assault it." Marcus studied the terrain. "We make Stone move James. Create a situation where keeping him at the black site becomes more dangerous than moving him." "How?" Sara's eyes lit with understanding. "We make it public. Stone holding a military officer without charges. If that becomes news, if reporters start asking questions, Stone has to either produce James or explain why he can't." Marcus pulled out his phone again, called the reporter. "I need you to run a story. Missing Army officer, last seen with General Garrett Stone, possible illegal detention. Can you have it published by morning?" The reporter's voice was cautious. "On what evidence?" "On my word, and the word of his sister, a decorated military intelligence officer." "That's thin. It's what I've got. Will you run it?" A pause, then, "Online in 3 hours." Marcus ended the call, looked at Sara and Cole. "Stone will see the story. He'll know we're not coming quietly. He'll have to move James or risk federal investigators showing up." "And when he moves him?" Cole asked. "We hit the convoy, take James back, get everyone to safety before Stone can spin the narrative." "That's suicide. Stone will have overwhelming force. Then we make the odds better." Marcus pulled out this brick of C4 Grizzly had provided. Cole's eyes widened. "You want to blow up a military convoy?" "I want to stop it long enough to extract 1 prisoner. The explosion is just motivation." "This is insane." "Probably. But it's the only play we have that doesn't end with all of us in body bags." They spent the next 6 hours preparing. Marcus and Cole scouted potential routes Stone would use: mountain roads, narrow passes, limited escape options. Sara monitored communications, tracking military movements, building a pattern. At 0200, her computer pinged. "I've got something. Encrypted transmission from Stone's location. Heavy transport requested for 0600 pickup. Route filed with Logistics Command." She pulled up the route. Highway 12 North, then Forest Service Road 47. Perfect ambush terrain. Marcus studied the map, his alpha instincts calculating angles and distances, and the narrow margin between success and catastrophic failure. "Here, where the road crosses Miller Creek. Bridge is old, single lane. They'll have to slow down. That's where we hit them." Cole checked his watch. 4 hours to position and prepare. They loaded the trucks in darkness, weapons and explosives, and the grim knowledge that in 4 hours they'd either save James Morgan or get themselves killed trying. As they prepared to leave, Sara touched Marcus's arm. The contact sent electricity through his wolf, mate bond pulling stronger with every interaction. "Thank you for believing me, for helping save my brother." "He's not the only one I'm saving." Marcus didn't explain. Didn't need to. Sara understood. This wasn't just about James. It was about Natalie, about David, about every person Stone had killed or let die in pursuit of power. This was about justice. They drove in convoy, lights off, using night vision to navigate Forest Service roads that hadn't seen traffic in months. At the ambush site, they positioned vehicles in cover, strung date cord across the road, placed shaped charges under the bridge supports. Cole worked with focused intensity, and Marcus remembered teaching him demolitions at Fort Benning. Back when Cole was a fresh lieutenant and Marcus was a captain who still believed the system worked. Strange how life brought you full circle. By 05:30 they were in position, Marcus and Sara on the north ridge with long rifles, Cole at the bridge with the detonator and an AR platform, backup routes mapped, emergency rally points designated, every detail covered except the one that mattered most. Whether Stone would actually move James, or whether this was all an elaborate trap. At 05:47, Sara's radio crackled. Movement. 3 vehicles, 2 armored SUVs and a prisoner transport. Military escort plus. She paused, her scent shifting to alarm shifters. I count at least 4 wolves in partial form. Marcus's own wolf stirred, recognizing the challenge. Stone had brought Alpha enforcers. This wasn't just a prisoner transport. This was a gauntlet. Cole's voice came through the headset. "On your call, brother." Marcus watched the convoy approach through his scope. Lead vehicle, transport in the middle, trail vehicle. And surrounding them, wolves in combat form, enhanced strength, enhanced speed, still able to use weapons. Stone wasn't taking chances. Inside that middle vehicle, James Morgan, alive or dead. They'd find out soon. The lead vehicle reached the bridge, started across. Marcus took a breath, let it out slow. His wolf pushed against his control, wanting to shift, to fight, to protect his potential mate's brother. He kept it caged, for now. Now, Cole triggered the charges. The world turned to thunder and fire and the shriek of metal tearing apart. The bridge supports blew with sequential precision, dropping the roadway into the creek bed below. The lead vehicle tried to brake, failed, went over the edge in a tumble of breaking glass and screaming metal. The transport vehicle stopped hard. Doors flew open, guards spilled out, weapons raised. But among them, wolves. 4 of them, partial shift, combat ready. Marcus put his first round through the engine block of the trail vehicle. Not a kill shot, disable, not eliminate. Even now, even against Stone's people, he chose restraint where possible. Sara fired, suppressing rounds, her shots precisely placed to force guards into cover without causing casualties. Professional, controlled, everything an operator should be. Cole moved in from the flank, fast and low, using terrain the way Marcus had taught him. Then Marcus saw the transport's back door open, saw guards dragging someone out. Dark hair, civilian clothes, hands zip-tied behind his back. James Morgan, alive. Relief flooded through Marcus's wolf, followed immediately by renewed determination. They'd found him. Now they just had to get him out. Marcus shifted aim, put a round into the ground between the guards and their prisoner. They dropped, scrambled for cover. Cole reached James, cut the zip ties with his combat knife, hauled him toward the tree line. That's when everything went wrong. Return fire started, professional and coordinated. But worse, the shifted wolves moved with speed that made mockery of human reflexes. They closed the distance between the convoy and Marcus's position in seconds, moving with predatory grace that spoke of alpha bloodlines and combat training. Marcus and Sara provided covering fire, but shooting at moving alphas was different from static targets. They were fast, too fast. Then movement from the overturned lead vehicle. Someone climbing out of the wreckage. Big, moving with fluid grace despite the 15-foot drop that should have broken bones. Through the scope, Marcus saw him, recognized him from intelligence briefings. Viktor Petrov, Stone's top enforcer, Russian Alpha. The man they called the Wolf Killer because he'd murdered 3 Alpha challengers in ritual combat and eaten their hearts. Petrov raised a hand. The return fire stopped. The pursuing wolves halted. His voice carried across the ravine, thick accent cutting through morning air. "Captain Kane, impressive. But you should know General Stone sends his regards, and he wants you to understand something very important. Petrov smiled, all teeth and predatory satisfaction. This wasn't a prisoner transport, this was bait, and you just bit down hard. Marcus felt ice wash through his system, saw Sara's eyes widen with the same realization. They'd been played. Movement in the trees behind their position. Marcus spun, saw shapes emerging from cover. 6 more wolves. Professional gear. Surrounding them. Petrov's laughter echoed across the ravine. General said you were smart, tactical. But pride makes alphas stupid. You thought you were saving her brother. Really, you just delivered yourself to exactly where Stone wants you. Sara grabbed Marcus's arm, her scent sharp with fear, not for herself, but for him. Marcus. The encrypted file. It wasn't complete. It was bait to make us move. Understanding crashed through him. James had been captured with incomplete intelligence. Stone let them decrypt it, let them plan the rescue, led them right into a kill box. Petrov moved closer, his massive frame rippling with barely contained alpha power. Drop weapons, submit, or we kill everyone, starting with the brother. Marcus saw Cole, still exposed in the open, James beside him, both of them in Petrov's line of fire. His wolf snarled, demanding action, demanding he shift and fight and tear Petrov apart for threatening pack. But they were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, surrounded. He looked at Sara, saw the same calculation in her eyes, saw her prepared to fight anyway, to die fighting rather than submit. His mate, his pack, his responsibility. Marcus made his choice. He dropped his rifle, raised his hands. Good, Petrov said. Now the others. Sara hesitated, then followed Marcus's lead. Cole did the same, pulling James behind him protectively. Petrov approached with the swagger of an alpha who'd never known defeat. General Stone will be pleased. He's waited 18 months for this, for you to come out of hiding, for you to give him the excuse he needed to finish what Crimson Dawn started. What does he want? Petrov's smile widened. To break you, publicly. Make an example of the alpha who thought he could defy orders and survive. And your brother, your mate, her brother? All witnesses to your failure, all collateral damage Stone will blame on your resistance. Marcus felt his wolf rising, clawing at control, demanding blood and violence and the freedom to protect what was his. He held it back, barely. You're making a mistake. Petrov laughed. No, Captain. You made the mistake. 3 years ago when you refused a lawful order. Today when you thought you could win. And very soon when you realize Stone has already won. In the distance, the sound of helicopters grew louder. Stone was coming, bringing his full force, ending this his way. Marcus looked at Sara, at Cole, at James, at the pack he'd somehow assembled despite trying to stay isolated. His wolf made a decision his human brain would have rejected as suicide. If they were going down, they were going down fighting. And if Stone wanted an alpha who'd forgotten how to submit, Marcus would remind him why the Kane bloodline had ruled the Northern Territories for 8 generations. The shift hit him like lightning. Bones broke and reformed, muscle restructured. His clothes tore as fur erupted across flesh. Petrov's eyes widened just for a moment. Kill him! But Marcus was already moving. Alpha speed, alpha fury, 3 years of caged violence finally given purpose. The first wolf that tried to stop him went down under jaws that crushed armor like paper. The second lost its throat before it could shift fully. The third managed to get claws into Marcus's flank but paid for it with broken legs. Sara shifted. Not full wolf, she was beta, but combat form. Enhanced strength, maintained speech. She fought beside him, covering his back, moving with the kind of synchronization that came from mate bonds forming. Cole shifted too, partial alpha transformation, and suddenly they were pack fighting together like they'd trained for this their whole lives. Petrov watched for 3 seconds, then he shifted. Full alpha, massive, easily twice Marcus's size in wolf form. The 2 alphas circled, and Marcus's wolf recognized this for what it was. Challenge, dominance, the old law that said might makes right and winner takes all. They collided in the center of the road with the force of freight trains. Blood flew, fur tore, fangs found flesh. Marcus fought with everything he had, every technique, every dirty trick, every ounce of alpha fury that 3 years of grief had built up. But Petrov was bigger, stronger, trained specifically to kill other alphas. A paw the size of a dinner plate caught Marcus across the ribs, sent him tumbling. He rolled, came up bleeding, lungs screaming. Petrov stalked forward, confident, arrogant. That arrogance was his mistake. Marcus waited, let him close, then struck low, going for tendons instead of killing blows. Petrov stumbled, roared in pain and fury. Sara was there, claws raking across Petrov's exposed flank. Cole hit from the other side, teeth finding shoulder muscle. Pack tactics, 3 against 1. Petrov went down under their combined assault, shifted back to human, bleeding, beaten, but alive. Marcus stood over him, jaws around his throat, and for just a moment, his wolf wanted to finish it. Wanted to eliminate the threat permanently. Then Sara's voice cut through the blood haze. "Marcus, don't. You're not him. You're not Stone." He held for 3 more heartbeats, then released. Shifted back to human, naked and bleeding and victorious in ways that had nothing to do with violence. Around them, Stone's remaining wolves had stopped fighting, stared at their defeated Alpha, at Marcus, who'd chosen mercy when killing would have been easier. In the distance, the helicopters grew closer. But they weren't Stone's. They were federal, FBI markings clear on their sides. Sara stood, shifted back to human, grabbed her discarded clothes. "I called them before we left, told them everything. Stone's location, the illegal detention, the arms deals, all of it." "When?" 3 hours ago. "While you were planning the ambush." She met his eyes. "I knew it was a trap. But I also knew if we could stall long enough, if we could survive long enough, federal forces would arrive in time. You used yourself as bait, used us all as bait." She touched his face gently. "Sometimes you have to trust that the system works, even when it feels like it doesn't." The first helicopter landed. Armed federal agents swarmed out, securing the scene, taking Petrov and his wolves into custody. And from the second helicopter, a man Marcus didn't recognize approached. Military uniform, no visible rank. "General Kane?" He extended credentials. "Special Agent Carson, FBI. We've been investigating General Stone for 2 years. Your files accelerated our timeline. Stone is being arrested as we speak." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Not quite relief, but close. "My brother, James Morgan. Being treated by our medics now. He'll recover." "And Stone?" Agent Carson's smile was grim. "Facing about 47 charges, including treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and illegal arms dealing. He won't see freedom again." Marcus looked at Sara, at Cole, at James being helped into a helicopter by medical personnel. His pack, damaged but surviving. "It's over," Sara said softly. Marcus's wolf finally settled, exhausted and satisfied and no longer caged by grief. For now he agreed, because somewhere in the back of his mind he knew Stone had connections, resources, power that didn't end with an arrest, but that was a problem for tomorrow. Today they'd won, and that had to be enough. The federal safe house smelled like disinfectant and old coffee and the particular sterility of government buildings designed for function over comfort. Marcus sat in a conference room that could have been anywhere in America, watching through reinforced glass as FBI agents processed evidence that would either clear his name or bury him deeper. His ribs ached from Petrov's strike. His healing was slower than it should have been, Wolf exhausted from too many shifts in too short a time. But he was alive. They were all alive. Sometimes that was the best victory you could hope for. Sara appeared in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in hand. She'd showered, changed into borrowed FBI sweats, but still carried the scent of combat and mate bond that made Marcus's wolf stir despite his exhaustion. She sat beside him, close enough their shoulders touched. The contact sent warmth through his system, mate bond pulling stronger with every interaction. His wolf recognized her now without question. Potential mate, pack, his to protect and be protected by. The human part of him still struggled with the impossibility of it. You didn't get 2 true mates. The moon didn't grant that kind of mercy. But she was here, real, alive. And his wolf didn't care about impossibility. "James is stable," she said quietly. "Dehydrated, some bruising, but he'll recover fully." "Good." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sara spoke again. "Agent Carson says Stone was arrested 4 hours ago. No resistance. They found him at his campaign headquarters planning his presidential announcement." Marcus's wolf wanted to snarl at the thought of Stone free for even those hours, wanted to demand why the FBI hadn't moved sooner, hadn't prevented Natalie's death, hadn't stopped any of this before good people died. But he understood. Building a case against a 4-star general took time. Evidence. Witnesses willing to testify despite the risk. Sometimes justice was slow because it had to be thorough. What happens now? "Carson says you're being cleared. Full exoneration. Reinstatement of rank and title if you want it." Marcus shook his head. "I don't want the crown back." Sara studied him with those hazel eyes that saw too much. "Why not? You're a good leader. Your people respect you. Cole told me your territory thrived under your rule. I was king out of duty, family obligation, but I'm a better soldier than I ever was a ruler. Let someone else wear that weight. Cole, he's got the training, the temperament, and he cares about people more than power. That's what makes a good Alpha King. And you? I'll help him, if he wants me as brother instead of rival. Marcus met her eyes. And I'll stay in Montana, build something that matters without all the politics and ceremony. With me? The question hung between them, heavy with implications neither had fully acknowledged yet. Mate bonds didn't form instantly, even true ones. They required time, trust, choice. But the foundation was there, had been there since the moment she stepped out of her Jeep, and his wolf recognized something his human brain couldn't explain. If you'll have me. Sara's smile was small and real and devastating. I think I can manage a former Alpha King who hunts elk and teaches tracking and occasionally shifts into a giant wolf to fight Russian mercenaries. Occasionally. Well, she leaned into him slightly. Maybe more than occasionally if people keep trying to kill us. Let's try to avoid that. Good plan. The door opened. Agent Carson entered, followed by Cole and a medic supporting James. Sara was on her feet immediately, crossing to her brother, checking him over with hands that shook slightly despite her professional control. James pulled her into a hug that made her rifle clatter against his borrowed hospital scrubs. You came for me. Always. She stepped back, keeping one hand on his arm like she needed to confirm he was real. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm fine. Bruised ego mostly. Should have been more careful about covering my tracks. You got the evidence we needed. That's what matters. James's eyes found Marcus over Sara's shoulder. You're the Alpha everyone said murdered civilians. Former Alpha. And I didn't murder anyone. Your sister proved that. David talked about you, said you were the best officer he ever served under. Said if he had to die, at least it was trying to save someone worth saving. The words hit Marcus harder than Petrov's claws. He swallowed against sudden tightness in his throat. I'm sorry I couldn't save him, or Natalie, or any of them. James moved forward, extended his hand despite Sara's protective grip. From what I found, nobody could have saved them. Stone made sure of that. But you tried. That counts for something. Marcus took the offered hand, felt the weight of absolution he didn't quite deserve, but needed anyway. Agent Carson cleared his throat. We need formal statements from all of you. Depositions for the trial. You're looking at months of legal proceedings. How long until Stone faces charges? Cole asked. Arraignment is tomorrow. Trial will take time, but with the evidence we have, conviction is certain. Carson's expression was grimly satisfied. He's going away for life. Multiple life sentences, most likely. Marcus felt his wolf settle at that. Not vengeance, justice. There was a difference. What about his allies? The people who helped him? Sara's voice carried the sharpness of someone who'd lost too much to corruption. Being investigated. Some will flip, testify against him for reduced sentences. Others will go down with him. Carson met her eyes. This goes deeper than just Stone. Defense contractors, intelligence officials, military leadership. We're looking at the biggest corruption scandal in modern military history. Good. The word came from Cole, who'd been quiet until now. His wolf was close to the surface, barely contained fury at everything Stone had done to their family, their pack, their honor. I want to testify, want to look Stone in the eye and tell him exactly what I think of officers who betray their soldiers. You'll get your chance. Carson pulled out a tablet, began taking preliminary notes. But first, let's start with what each of you knows. They spent the next 6 hours giving statements. Marcus walked federal investigators through Operation Crimson Dawn, minute by minute. Every decision, every order, every moment when he'd chosen conscience over command. Sara detailed her investigation, the inconsistencies in the official record, the evidence James had compiled. Cole described his own doubts, the moment he'd started questioning the narrative he'd been fed. James provided the final pieces. Names, dates, financial transactions, communications between Stone and foreign military contractors. Everything needed to prove conspiracy, treason, murder. By the time they finished, the sun had set outside the safe house windows. Carson looked satisfied in the way prosecutors looked when they had an airtight case. This is good, more than good. With this testimony, Stone won't see daylight again. When can we leave? Marcus asked. Tomorrow. We'll arrange secure transport back to Montana for those who want it, though I'd recommend staying available for the trial. You're our star witnesses. We'll be there. Carson nodded, stood to leave, then paused. Captain Kane. For what it's worth, I read your service record. Everything before Crimson Dawn. You're one of the best officers this country ever produced. What happened to you was a travesty." Marcus didn't know how to respond to that. 3 years of carrying disgrace, and now federal agents were calling it a travesty. The vindication should have felt good. Mostly it just felt tired. "Thank you." After Carson left, the four of them sat in the conference room. "Pack," Marcus's wolf insisted. "Blood and chosen family bound by shared trauma and survival." Cole spoke first. "I owe you an apology for believing the lies, for turning my back when you needed pack support. You believed what you were told by people you trusted. Can't fault you for that." Still, Cole's expression was pained. "I'm your brother. Should have known better. Should have trusted you over Stone's word. You're here now. That's what matters." Sara reached across the table, took Marcus's hand in hers. The contact made his wolf rumble contentedly. "What happens after the trial?" Marcus looked at his brother, at Sara's brother, at the woman who'd lied to him and then saved him and somehow managed to become essential to his existence in less than 2 weeks. "We rebuild. Cole takes the throne if he wants it. James goes back to making sure corrupt officers can't operate in shadows. Sara and I." He paused, met her eyes. "Sara and I figure out what comes next, together." Her smile was answer enough. A week later, Marcus stood in a federal courthouse and watched General Garrett Stone arraigned on 47 counts of murder, multiple counts of treason, conspiracy, illegal arms dealing, and a list of charges that took the prosecutor 10 minutes to read. Stone showed no emotion as they read the charges, just stared straight ahead with the bearing of a soldier facing a firing squad. When the judge asked how he pleaded, his voice was steady. "Not guilty." The courtroom erupted. Marcus's wolf wanted to shift, to challenge, to make Stone admit his guilt in front of everyone. Sara's hand on his arm kept him grounded. "It doesn't matter what he claims," she whispered. "The evidence speaks for itself." She was right. Over the next 3 days, prosecutors presented financial records, communications, testimony from James about what he'd witnessed as Stone's aide, testimony from Petrov, who'd taken a deal to testify against his former employer, testimony from other members of Stone's inner circle who decided saving themselves was more important than loyalty. And through it all, Stone sat silent, impassive, like he was attending someone else's trial. On the 4th day, Marcus took the stand, walked the jury through Operation Crimson Dawn, through refusing the kill order, through finding Natalie and David bleeding out in the sand, through being blamed for murders he'd tried to prevent, through 3 years of exile and shame and carrying guilt for crimes he didn't commit. When he finished, the courtroom was silent. Even Stone looked affected for the first time, some crack in his composure showing grief, or maybe just recognition that his carefully constructed lies were crumbling. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Stone's face remained impassive as they read the verdict, but Marcus caught the moment something broke behind his eyes, the moment the general realized his war was over and he'd lost. As they led him away in shackles, Stone caught Marcus's eye one last time. "You won this battle, but there are others like me, always will be." Marcus nodded slowly. "And there'll always be someone to stop them." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Marcus gave a brief statement about justice and truth and the importance of holding everyone accountable. Then he left, ignoring shouted questions, Sara walking beside him. They drove back to Montana in companionable silence, watching the landscape change from urban sprawl to mountain wilderness. By the time they reached Black Pine Ridge, night had fallen and the stars were out in force. Marcus pulled up to his cabin, killed the engine, sat for a moment just breathing in the scent of pine and snow and home. Sara touched his arm. "You okay?" "Yeah." He turned to face her. "For the first time in 3 years? Yeah." "Good." They went inside, built a fire, made dinner together in the tiny kitchen with the easy coordination of people learning each other's rhythms, ate in comfortable silence. After, they sat on this porch with coffee and blankets, watching the northern lights dance across the sky in ribbons of green and purple. "I should probably ask," Sara said quietly, "about Natalie, about whether I'm—" She paused, searching for words. "Whether this is too fast, too soon." Marcus had been thinking about that question since the moment his wolf recognized her as potential mate, had wrestled with guilt and grief and the impossibility of loving someone new when Natalie still owned so much of his heart. "Natalie would want me to be happy," he said finally, "would want me to live instead of just surviving. And I think," he met Sara's eyes, "I think she'd like you. You're both stubborn, both fierce, both willing to fight for what you believe in." I wish I could have known her. Me too. They sat with that for a moment. Then Sara asked the question Marcus had been avoiding. Is the mate bond real? Between us? Or is it just biology and proximity and shared trauma? Marcus considered how to explain what his wolf knew, but his human brain struggled to accept. True mate bonds are rare. Most wolves never find them. I thought I'd had mine with Natalie, and that was it. One mate, one lifetime. But my wolf recognized you from the first moment, fought me every day trying to get closer to you. And I don't think biology alone explains that. So what do you think it is? I think, Marcus took her hand, maybe the moon grants mercy sometimes. Maybe love doesn't end just because someone dies. Maybe hearts are big enough to hold grief and hope at the same time. Maybe mate bonds are about choice as much as destiny. And you choose this, choose me? Every day, he said, for as long as you'll have me. Sara shifted closer, her scent wrapping around him like comfort and promise. Then I guess we're doing this. Guess so. They sat under Montana stars, two broken people choosing to heal together, and Marcus understood something he'd been too hurt to see before. Exile had brought him here. Grief had brought him low, but both had also brought him to this moment, this woman, this second chance at something worth fighting for. His wolf settled completely for the first time in 3 years. Content, home, pack. A week later, on the winter solstice when the pack magic ran strongest, they completed the mate bond ceremony. Not the elaborate political ritual Marcus had endured the first time, but something simpler, more real. They stood in a clearing near his cabin, surrounded by pack. Cole was there, having accepted the crown and already proving himself a worthy Alpha King. James was there, recovering fully and already making plans to reform military oversight. Grizzly and Tom and Doc Cross and 24 other wolves from Blackpine who'd become family over 18 months of exile. The ceremony was ancient. Words spoken in the old language, promises made under the full moon, blood mixed and bonds sealed through choice and magic and the weight of 8 generations of Kane Alphas witnessing. Marcus spoke first, his voice carrying across the clearing. I, Marcus Kane, claim you as mate, in honor, in battle, in peace, in grief remembered and joy discovered. I choose you with eyes open and heart willing. I bind myself to you before moon and pack. Sara's voice was steady and sure. I, Sara Morgan, claim you as mate, in trust, in truth, in love earned through fire and trial. I choose you not because fate demands it, but because my heart desires it. I bind myself to you before moon and pack. The bond snapped into place, not overwhelming, not consuming, just right. Like finding the last piece of a puzzle Marcus hadn't known was incomplete. His wolf sang with completion. Her wolf answered, and for one perfect moment, everything was exactly as it should be. The pack howled approval. Marcus and Sara stood together, mated and marked, and beginning something new from the ashes of everything they'd lost. After, there was food and fellowship, and the kind of celebration that came from surviving impossible odds. Marcus watched his pack, his family, his brother laughing with Sara's brother, and felt something settle in his chest. Contentment. Not happiness exactly. The grief for Natalie still lived in him, would always live in him. But alongside it now, hope, future, the possibility that broken things could be repaired and broken people could be whole. Sara found him as the celebration wound down, most of the pack having shifted to wolf form for a midnight run through the forest. You coming? Marcus looked at his mate, his pack, the life he'd somehow built from disgrace and exile. Yeah, I'm coming. They shifted together, his massive alpha form and her sleeker beta wolf, and ran through Montana wilderness under stars that had witnessed 1,000 such runs and would witness 1,000 more. Free, wild, home. Behind them, the cabin stood warm and waiting. Ahead, the pack ran and played and lived in ways that had nothing to do with politics or power or the weight of crowns. Marcus's wolf howled joy into the night, and the pack answered. This was victory, not the kind that came from defeating enemies or winning trials, the kind that came from choosing to live fully after loss, from building family from fragments, from loving again despite every reason not to. In a maximum security federal prison 3 states away, Garrett Stone sat in his cell and planned appeals that would never succeed, plotted revenge that would never manifest, raged against a justice system that had finally caught up with his crimes. But that was his story, his ending, his prison. Marcus's story was different. His story was about second chances and chosen family and the courage to be vulnerable after trauma. About wolves who learned to be human again and humans who learned to let their wolves run free. About a disgraced king who found something better than a throne. He found a mate, a pack, a purpose that had nothing to do with ruling and everything to do with protecting what mattered. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. The pack ran through the night, and Marcus Kane ran with them. Not as king, not as soldier, just as wolf, as mate, as man who'd survived the worst and chosen to believe in better. The moon watched, the stars witnessed, the forest welcomed them home. And somewhere in the mountains, where grief and hope existed in the same breath, where loss and love learned to coexist, Marcus finally found the peace Natalie had asked him to seek. Not by forgetting her, but by honoring her memory through living fully, through loving again, through being brave enough to let broken pieces form something new. He'd been a king, he had been a soldier, he'd been broken and exiled and lost. Now he was something better. He was home, and that was enough. The end.